Hell was once a place you could walk to. Not under the earth, not at the center of the universe. Just outside ancient Jerusalem, there was a valley with steep sides, tombs, fires, and a name people remembered with disgust. In Hebrew, it was connected with Hinnom. In Greek, it became Gehenna, and in many English Bibles, Gehenna became hell. That does not mean the whole modern idea of hell came from one valley. The real story is stranger. The Bible had Sheol, a dark place for the dead. The Greeks had Hades and Tartarus. Jewish apocalyptic writers imagined judgment after death. Christians inherited those words and sharpened them. Later, Islam would speak of Jahannam with its own powerful imagery. But one piece of the map began as a real landscape. A valley outside Jerusalem became a warning, then a symbol, then a doorway into one of the most terrifying ideas in religion. Before Gehenna became famous, the Hebrew Bible already had a word for the realm of the dead, Sheol. But Sheol was not exactly hell in the later sense. It was not usually described as a torture chamber for bad people. It was the shadow below life, the pit, the grave, the dark country where the dead went. The disturbing thing about Sheol is how quiet it is. In some biblical poems, it is a place where praise stops, memory fades, and the living world is cut off. Kings, slaves, the righteous, and the wicked can all be imagined descending there. It is grim, but it is not yet the medieval furnace. That matters because many modern readers see the word hell in an English Bible and assume the same idea is present everywhere. It is not. Different ancient words were later squeezed into one English word. Sheol, Hades, Gehenna, and Tartarus do not all mean the same thing. The story of hell begins with that confusion, several maps of death slowly being folded into one. The Valley of Hinnom lies south and west of ancient Jerusalem. It is not imaginary. It is part of the city's physical geography, a ravine outside the sacred center, close enough to be seen, remembered, and feared. In the books of Kings and Jeremiah, the valley is connected with Topheth, a place condemned for child sacrifice. The texts accuse some people in Judah of making their sons and daughters pass through fire there. King Josiah is remembered as defiling the site so it could not be used again for that ritual. Jeremiah turns the valley into a prophecy of horror, saying it will no longer be called Topheth or the Valley of the Son of Hinnom, but the Valley of Slaughter. A historian has to be careful here. The biblical writers are not neutral tour guides. They are condemning a practice they hate. But the memory is clear enough. This valley became associated with fire, death, defilement, and divine judgment. That is the spark that later traditions kept feeding. Sacred geography works because places remember. A battlefield can stay haunted in memory long after the blood is gone. A ruined temple can keep its power after its walls collapse. The Valley of Hinnom worked like that. It sat near Jerusalem, but it carried the opposite meaning. Jerusalem was the city of the temple. Hinnom became the landscape of pollution, forbidden worship, and bodies left in shame. In Jeremiah, the punishment is not abstract. It is physical. Corpses fill the valley. Burial fails. The place becomes a sign that a society has broken its covenant and is now facing disaster. This is why the garbage dump story is not the story we need. Later writers sometimes claim the valley became a burning refuse pit. But that explanation is not the strong foundation. The stronger foundation is older and darker. Biblical memory tied the valley to sacrifice, desecration, fire, bodies, and judgment. Gehenna did not need to be a city dump to become terrifying. It was already cursed. By the Second Temple period, Jewish ideas about death and judgment were changing. The older picture of Sheol as a single shadowy destination became more complicated. Some texts began to imagine resurrection, final judgment, separate fates for the righteous and wicked, and places where the dead waited for justice. The Book of Enoch is one of the important witnesses to that shift. It imagines compartments for souls, judgment scenes, fiery punishment, and a universe where moral evil has consequences beyond ordinary death. These are not identical to later Christian hell, but they move in that direction. In that world, Gehenna could stop being only a ravine outside Jerusalem and become a name for the fate of the wicked. A place on the edge of the city became a symbol on the edge of the world. The geography turned into theology. In the New Testament, Jesus does not usually use a single English word called hell. He speaks in a Jewish world full of older images. One of the most important words is Gehenna. In the Gospel traditions, Gehenna is where the warning becomes personal. It is better to lose a hand or an eye than to be thrown into Gehenna. It is tied to fire, destruction, judgment, and the seriousness of moral failure. Mark connects the image with a line from Isaiah. The worm does not die, and the fire is not quenched. That line originally looks toward a scene of defeated corpses outside Jerusalem, not a modern cartoon of an underworld. But when it is brought together with Gehenna, resurrection, judgment, and apocalyptic expectation, it becomes much more than a local ravine. The valley is still there, but the warning has expanded beyond the map. Then translation made everything messier. Greek-speaking Jews and Christians used words like Hades, Gehenna, and Tartarus. Hades was the Greek underworld, the realm of the dead. Tartarus was a deeper prison of punishment in Greek myth. Gehenna carried the Jewish memory of the Valley of Hinnom. The New Testament uses these words in different ways. Hades can mean the realm of the dead. Gehenna can mean the place of final judgment. Tartarus appears in one passage about rebellious angels being held for judgment. But later readers often encountered all of this through the single English word hell. That made the idea feel older and simpler than it really was.
It sounded as if the Bible had one fixed location called hell from the beginning.
Under the English word, the older map is layered. Hebrew Sheol, Greek Hades, Jewish Gehenna, Greek Tartarus, and later Christian imagination. Once Gehenna became a symbol of judgment, the imagery could travel. Fire was already a language of purification, destruction, and divine presence. Worms, darkness, chains, pits, prisons, and burning valleys all became available as ways to picture the fate of evil. Early Christians did not invent this vocabulary from nothing. They inherited Jewish apocalyptic expectation, read it through the life and teaching of Jesus, translated it into Greek and Latin, and then watched it grow through sermons, visions, art, and theology. By the medieval period, hell had become a vast imaginative world. It had gates, levels, monsters, punishments, and geography. Some of that came from biblical language. Some came from Greek and Roman underworld traditions. Some came from later visionary literature. That is how a valley becomes a cosmos. The original place does not disappear. It becomes one layer inside a larger terror. The story does not stop with Christianity. Islam speaks of Jahannam, a word related to Gehenna, but Islamic descriptions have their own scriptural shape, their own moral logic, and their own imagery of judgment. Other traditions also imagine punishments after death. Zoroastrian texts speak about judgment and a bridge the soul must cross. Indian religions develop Naraka, realms of punishment that can be terrible but are often not eternal in the same way. The point is not that every religion copied one valley. That would be too simple. Human cultures kept asking the same impossible question: if justice fails in this life, does it arrive after death? Different religions answered with different maps. Some imagined a pit, some a court, some a bridge, some a river, a fire, a prison, or a realm of rebirth. Gehenna is one answer inside that bigger human problem. It is the local place that became a universal warning. So what can we actually say? Hell was not born fully formed. It was assembled. Sheol gave the Hebrew Bible a shadowy place of the dead. The Valley of Hinnom gave Jewish memory a cursed landscape outside Jerusalem. Second Temple writers developed stronger ideas of resurrection, judgment, and punishment. Greek language added Hades and Tartarus. Christian preaching and art fused these images into the hell many people recognize today. Islam and other traditions carried their own powerful afterlife geographies. The modern word hides all of that. It makes one idea look simple when it is really a stack of older words and places. That is why the valley matters. You can still point to it on a map, not because every later belief can be reduced to one ravine, but because one ravine shows how religious ideas are made. A place becomes a memory becomes a warning becomes a world. Hell was once a valley outside Jerusalem. Then the valley moved into the imagination of history,